Hi there, everybody. I'm Jeff Mayers from WisPolitics.com here with the February 8th virtual luncheon with the new Assembly Democratic leaders. Before we introduce the leaders, I want to talk about our new directory, the 2022 WisPolitics directory and election preview. It's available at WisPolitics.com. But if you want a printed copy, and I find that sometimes that still comes in handy to have a nice printed copy, a durable printed copy, you can contact us at info@wispolitics.com, and we'll be back in touch with you about how to order that printed program. I also want to talk about some upcoming events that we have, both virtual and in person. On February 17th, we have a virtual program on China trade, the U.S.-China trade relationship with U.S. Representative Ron Kind, who's on the House Trade Subcommittee. And we also have a couple of academic experts to join him. That's on February 17th. On February 23rd, we're doing an in-person luncheon in Appleton at Fox Valley Tech on sustainable farming with the DADCAP Secretary, the State Ag Secretary, Randy Romansky, and the Assembly Agriculture Committee Chair, Talkin. So you can tune into wispolitics.com and get the details on those programs and how to register for those. But today, we have our virtual luncheon with the Assembly Democratic leaders. We want to thank our sponsors for this event series, which is online and at the Madison Club. I want to thank Hush Blackwell Strategies, American Family Insurance, ARP Wisconsin, Xcel Energy, and Walmart. And now I'm going to introduce our guests for today. I felt it important to have the top two leaders, the newly elected leaders of the Assembly Democratic Caucus. And I want to introduce and welcome Representative Greta Neubauer of Racine, and she is the new Assembly Minority Leader, and Representative Kalan Haywood of Milwaukee. He's the new Assistant Minority Leader for the Assembly Democrats. Welcome, representatives.
Thanks for having us.
So you're new to the job. You're taking this job in the middle of the cycle. Elections are months away, new districts and all of that. And so you have a lot ahead of you. But for a lot of people, I'm not sure they know your backgrounds or how this transpired. So, I don't want to always rely on age. I'm old now. I'm over 60. So, but, Representative Haywood is the youngest person in the state assembly. He's age 22, and Representative Neubauer is 30, and certainly one of the youngest people in the legislature. So when you two got elected, I don't know whether it was part of the pitch you made to your fellow members. Was it a youth movement, a diversity movement, or what was it? And what do the two of you come to symbolize for Assembly Democrats? Let's start with Representative Neubauer.
Sure. Well, thank you for the question, Jeff. It's not something that I led with in reaching out to my fellow members. And to be honest, I think it's pretty similar to the experience I had when I first ran for office 4 years ago. I was 26. And when I knocked on people's doors in Racine, what they often said to me was that I reminded them of their kids or their grandkids, and that they hoped that with me and other young people in office, we could build towards a Wisconsin where their family would really want to live and they would want to stay. They knew that required some investment in strong public schools, in childcare, in startup capital, quality public transit, resilient infrastructure. And I think while it's really important that Kalan and I are young and that we have different backgrounds that mean that we bring a different perspective to the work, I identify as LGBTQ+. It's also really important that we are able to bring those perspectives and that we're able to talk to and relate to other young people who want Wisconsin to be better, who want to raise their kids here, who want to see a future for their neighbors. And so it's an exciting moment. I'm really honored to be able to be, I believe, the second woman, Democratic woman in this position. And I think the first open member of the LGBTQ plus community, and a young person. And what I hope it represents to people is that there's a space for them in this work, that there's an opportunity for them to engage no matter what the age, how old they are. And I hope that, what we're able to do is bring that long-term perspective that means that we are able to fight for Wisconsin, not just policies that will help us today or tomorrow, but in the very long term.
Okay, thanks. Representative Haywood.
So, Jeff, first of all, thank you for having us here today. I also thanks for the question. Everyone's been asking that question when you think about our age, 22 and 30, that they ask. But, over the last couple of years, I believe is the fact that our caucus has grown bigger. Our caucus has grown more diverse when it comes to age, race, geographic location, et cetera, et cetera. So I think for us as a caucus, it's important to have a leadership team that also reflects that diversity. But also then I think the question of why right now? We are at the start of a decade, it's 2022. We're at the start of a decade and we're talking about building into the future. We're talking about building into the upcoming decade. So as young leaders or as leaders in the caucus, really being able to focus on how we build into the future, how do we build that longevity and sustainability for the years to come. Also, as we're engaging voters both in and outside the building and engaging the people we represent, it's important for them to see folks that represent them and they feel they can connect to the leaders they trust to represent them. But also, secondly, though, it's important that we are able to engage them and relate to the voters that are making the policy forward. Especially, I think, right now, as we have young people who are turning 18 every year, and they're part of a new voting demographic that we have not yet tapped into. I think for both parties, it's going to be a race who can really tap into our young people and support them and represent them. I think that our caucus has shown that not only do we say we want to support you as young people, we're also showing that our money where our mouth is. We are actually having a leadership team that reflects that, shows that. You'll see that through our policy and our messaging as well. But we are having a more diverse and inclusive leadership team as well as caucus, because the state of Wisconsin is a very diverse state. So making sure that having a caucus and team and leadership team that reflects that is super important.
Okay, so thank you for that, Representative Haywood. Now, the other part of my lead-in alluded to, you're coming in mid-cycle, which is tough in and of itself. And then you're facing elections in new districts only months away. And, I'm not being mean in saying this, you're deep in the minority. So, I mean, part of the sense I get from the two of you being selected is the caucus also being like, well, we're tired of being in the minority. Let's go with the future. And I'm wondering whether you sense that, you heard that, you feel that, what about the tired of the minority quotient of it? You can go for it. I can call on you, or you guys can.
Yeah.
Okay, Representative Neubauer, you're the leader. So go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I can jump in. Always a little tough on Zoom. It's a great question, and absolutely, our caucus and the people who we talk to in the state of Wisconsin want to see a change. They're not happy with the leadership that we have seen coming out of the legislature for the last few years. And so it is absolutely our goal to do everything we can to help the governor become reelected, to pick up more seats, and to move towards being in the majority party. The reason that I ran for this seat is because I love Wisconsin and I want to fight for it. And I know that Kalan and I both are willing to do whatever it takes to make life better for people in our state. I mentioned I'm a young person. I want to raise my future kids here. I want them to live in a state that has great public schools, that has access to outdoor spaces, strong public infrastructure. And I know that that is true for the majority of people in this state. And I think we are in a critically important moment. The decisions made in the next few years will impact our communities for years to come. And so we are, of course, awaiting new maps. We are doing everything we can to be ready for this election cycle to contest all across the state. And we are going to do what we can inside and outside of the building to make government a force for good. No matter the context, no matter if people are projecting a good or bad year for our party, we will keep the well-being of the people of our state at the core of our work. And I trust that the voters of the state will see that in this election cycle.
Go ahead, Representative Haywood.
I'll just echo that. Coming in this time as part of the minority, it's always your goal to get to the majority. That's always your goal. I often believe that our caucus has served as the moral compass for the state of Wisconsin and fighting for the issues and being on the right side of a lot of issues, especially when it comes to social issues and quality of life issues. So knowing that and understanding that, our goal is to do everything we can as young people, bringing the energy to the table to make sure we're able to mobilize and engage folks. And of course, still marrying that with the wisdom, the years and years of experience that all of our caucus brings to the table. So taking that energy, marrying it with that wisdom and that knowledge, and figure out how we best just make Wisconsin a desired place to live. We want to retain and keep Wisconsinites who grow up here, get educated here, and want them to stay here and raise families. We also want to be a place that folks who are looking to move their home states or looking to move post-college, but they want to come to Wisconsin because it's full of opportunity, it's full of prosperity, and also it's a place where I can have an overall good quality of life and a place where people want to raise families. And that's what we're putting out to folks this year. This is how we're trying to do. We're trying to make Wisconsin a desired place you want to go to, you want to live in, you want to thrive in.
Okay, so let's, before we talk about the elections, we will talk about that, but let's just talk about what's ahead. The two-year session is winding down. It's due to end in March sometime. Republicans are controlling the agenda in both houses. So what's your mission in this, the remaining weeks of the really the business part of the session? The session won't end until the end of the calendar year, but what's your mission going forward here? And Representative Haywood, why don't you take a swipe at that?
Yeah. So over the last year and a half, I think globally, we've all been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And for many of us, many Wisconsin, many members of the body, we all been hit by the pandemic personally, whether that is through family ties, whether it's economically, or just overall how our current day-to-day life has been impacted. There's no normal thing. None of us expect to be where we are here in 2022. But making sure that we're fighting to, one, control the spread and make sure we keep folks safe and really putting emphasis and focus on public health and making sure that we're, one, as we're turning back to work, equipping folks to be back at work, be clear in the workplace, but also supporting our first responders and our hospitals to make sure they are able to do what they have to do to make sure they take care of us and to keep us safe and healthy. But also economically, how we've been impacted when it comes to our small businesses, our workforce. We talked recently about in the media about how our state right now we have a surplus, we are having some record low unemployment, we have growth in business. So how do we continue to support that as we bounce back? Might sound like a Democratic punchline, but truly build back better. Make sure that not only are we getting back to where we were before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, we want to make sure we're putting folks in a better position than they were before to come out of this thing even stronger. So supporting public safety, whether it may be in our communities, in our homes, our neighborhoods, also our schools, make sure that our children are safe, and make sure also our schools when it comes to K-12 have resources they need and support they need when it comes to trying to educate our kids and really adapt to this whole new virtual world. We're used to in person, now we do things, but now we're doing virtual because of safety reasons and back and forth. So making sure we're really supporting our K-12 system around the state, make sure our students have what they need. All in all, I know Representative Neubauer will of course add, but making sure we really put the values of people in Wisconsin first and making sure that the things people really care about, things that hit home. We talk about politics, we do a lot of inside baseball when it comes to politics and legislation, but really making sure the policy we're pushing for, the resources we're pushing for and allocating really respond to the day-to-day needs of everyone.
Right. In past years, I'm going to ask this question a little more specifically to you, Representative Neubauer, the new Assembly Minority Leader. So in past years, if there were a surplus this big, $3.8 billion, there would be a multitude of press releases and announcements on how to use that money, from all 132 legislators. It's been amazingly quiet on that front. The governor has introduced a plan, a lot of it going to individual taxpayers and family members. So how will Assembly Democrats, what's the message you want to send about how to use the surplus?
Yeah, thanks for this question. And, what I'll say is I think this dovetails really well with what Kalan, Representative Haywood, just shared. Our priorities are responding to what we are hearing from the people of the state of Wisconsin right now. People continue to struggle with the COVID-19 pandemic. We are still in a surge. We are still in a wave with the Omicron variant. And this pandemic did hit people differently. And I think what the governor's surplus proposal does really well is goes to the heart of some of those issues that we're experiencing right now. Childcare shortage, right? The governor's proposal expands the newly created child independent care tax credit from 50 to 100% of the federal credit. It gets at supporting caregivers to adult family members as well. It does pump needed money into our schools to help young people. Anyone who's got a young person in their life knows that they have borne the brunt of this pandemic, and we really need to show up for them right now. We need to provide the resources necessary so they can be safe in school, so that we can start to reduce some of the gaps that were exacerbated in terms of outcomes over the course of the pandemic. So the reason that you haven't seen a multitude of plans from our caucus is because we are united around the governor's plan. We have been in close communication with them and talking to them and sharing the concerns that we're hearing from our constituents. And those are reflected in this plan. The intention to send every Wisconsinite $150 check, $600 for a family of 4, so that they can be buoyed through the rising costs right now. These are crucial policies. And I know that sometimes the Capitol can get mired in partisanship, but I really hope that we can see over the next month an effort to recognize that these policies are in the best interest of the people of our state, and it is our responsibility to pass them to help Wisconsinites who continue to struggle in this moment.
Okay, staying with you, Representative Neubauer, what do you expect the Republicans to do? Do you expect them to, they're not going to pass Governor Evers' proposal, but what are they going to do? Are they going to reject it? Are they going to up the ante? What do you think?
It's a little hard to say, but my hope is that even if they don't introduce this bill in its current form, that they will see the way the people of Wisconsin have responded to this proposal. They will see how people have expressed the need for, again, support on childcare, having a little extra money in the bank, appreciate the efforts on workforce that the governor has made over the last couple of months. And that they will join in, that they won't say, we'll wait till the next budget to address these concerns, but that they will actually take some action, and we will be able to find some common ground on these issues.
All right, Representative Haywood, I'm going to ask you something. I think you mentioned about, workforce issues. But at any rate, a lot of, we have a record low unemployment rate, but businesses around the state are saying, well, we can't get workers. And I'm just wondering, what maybe what the feeling is in your district, and what do you think some of the solutions are?
Yeah, definitely. So when you hear things like we have record low unemployment, for folks who are in certain communities like my district, for them, it's a very different reality sometimes. They may be, I'm a part of that 86,000 folks who do not have a job. I'm a part of the group of folks who are underemployed or want a better job. I may have a job, but I'm working 2-3 jobs to make ends meet. So talking about underemployment. So the reality is we really have to figure out how do we support and build a skilled workforce. So we have folks around the state who are small business owners or big business owners who are looking to hire and attract talent. How can the state really pitch in? How can we use some of those surplus dollars to build programming and support programming infrastructure and build that pipeline for folks who want to work, who have been working but need the development and skills to be equipped to work in these different jobs. Also, with tapping into how do we recruit students from high school and college to be able to build that pipeline from there to have a career. Raised in Wisconsin, live in Wisconsin, educated in Wisconsin. How do we get you into a job? So working on building those pipelines, also working on getting that talent attraction I talked about earlier about making Wisconsin a desired place folks want to come to. So we want to attract not only that talent, but also attract more businesses as well. So they can come in, they want to come in, they want to employ, they want to bring them here. But all in all, we really have to figure out really supporting our businesses, supporting our small businesses. They are the backbone of our community. We're really getting folks to those jobs. And hearing folks, folks are saying, I can get a job that I can get. It's not the job that I really want to have, or that's not the job that I really need to have or to take care and provide for my family. So let's talk about job creation as well. It's not just about creating jobs, it's about creating jobs that have family sustaining wages as well. Make sure that folks can actually afford a living. So I think that's what we have to focus on right now is figure out how do we just focus on building more of the pipeline, but also building that skilled workforce. I think when I talk to folks, that's what I'm hearing. They like the workers are actually there sometimes, but it's not the skilled workforce that they actually need for that particular job. But also even looking at the urban and rural divide when it comes to housing and make sure there's housing, affordable, safe, quality housing near those jobs that folks who can move out and commute for an hour or more to a new job. They can live by their job and afford to live by their job. And it's when we have, in my district, we have the people. We want to make sure we're bringing the jobs to the people as well. And then also with that, talking about transportation as well, make sure we really do a better job in our state of creating a more efficient and fluid public transportation system for folks to commute to and from those jobs.
Yeah, we had a discussion on February 3rd last week at American Family Field where some of these transportation ideas came up, about bus rapid transit and whatnot that would actually help get workers to the jobs, and so in a more efficient way. So, maybe some of the infrastructure money can help with that too. All right, let me ask you, I'm trying to pick off some of these issues and so we can fit in some audience questions. But if you have something to say and you're not directly ask it, it's okay to pipe in. So Representative Neubauer, a lot of what the Republicans are doing in the last couple of weeks has to do with legislation drafted to fix things that they think need to be changed in the election procedures, in the election process. And I think you've issued some strong statements about that. But, the Legislative Audit Bureau, over the years, very well respected as a bipartisan institution, did seem to find some things that I guess needed to be tightened up. And I've heard the Senate Minority Leader Bewley say this as well. Are there things that you think could be done outside of some of the proposals that Republicans seem to want to pass, but even if they do pass them, Evers would veto them? I mean, are there things though that can be done, should be done?
Yeah, thanks for this question. I guess what I'll say is I think the important baseline here is that audit after lawsuit found no evidence of widespread fraud in Wisconsin. And so that is an important baseline for us to start from. And I think the results of the audit that you mentioned have been misinterpreted. And frankly, I would say disingenuously discussed amongst elected officials in the Capitol on the Republican side of the aisle. What we have here, in my understanding, is we have elected officials who are using conspiracy theories as an effort to undermine our free and fair elections in this state. And really, I don't think that the importance of this can be overstated. We are in a turning point in this country. When we have an effort to place partisan election officials in nonpartisan roles, when we have efforts to change the rules, when we have Representative Ramthun again and again trying to pull Wisconsin's electors back from the 2020 election, we have a fundamental disagreement about what it means to be in a democracy. Our role as legislators is to listen to the will of the people, to support the will of the people to be done in our body. And that's just frankly not what is coming out of the Republicans' proposals right now. We believe that every voter should have access to the ballot box, and we should be making it easier for every eligible voter to participate in our elections. If that's the common ground that we can start from, we're very happy to have a conversation. But if we're talking about putting, again, partisan officials in nonpartisan bodies, if we're talking about further restricting access to the ballot box, we're just not going to be able to find common ground.
Okay. Representative Haywood, a lot of this criticism is aimed at, from the Republican side, aimed at Dane and Milwaukee counties, because those are, a lot of Democratic votes are there. And that's where, the recounts took place. And, I'm wondering, how you feel and maybe how your district feels about these kind of efforts. Do you take them personally? Do you or is it just politics?
So I believe a lot of it is politics. We're having this deep dive into the 2020 election and what took place. I would be A-OK if it was the conversation around just making sure our elections were safe and secure. And that truthfully was the motive and the intent behind it. I think within all systems, there's always room for improvement and things to be tightened up and taken care of. However, when you're attacking two counties who are primarily Democratic voter-based counties, and trying to pick through those votes and trying to determine whether make it harder for those voters to get to the ballot box, is how they affect the overall statewide elections. That's not what we should be doing and focusing on. I think what Milwaukee has done, and election officials have done, and volunteers and poll workers have done, is make sure Milwaukee is an epicenter for what it means to run a safe, fair, and accessible election. We want to make sure folks have access to the ballot box. It's when there's so many obstacles and hurdles put up at every turn, it makes it really, really hard and discouraging for voters who already may not be active voters or the traditional voters who are trying to get involved in the political process because they're tired of seeing the same things happen over and over again. And they want to hold elected officials accountable, both federal, state, county, and city levels. Hold folks accountable. They want to get engaged, but there's these roadblocks that have been put up and put in place. I think what Milwaukee has done is we've run an efficient election, but also we have shown the rest of the state and other states as well how you can really work on making sure folks have access to the ballot box. I think that's what we've done. That's what we intend on continuing.
Okay, Representative Haywood, I'm going to stay with you. You mentioned before we talked about what the mission is for the rest of the session, you mentioned public safety and the Democrats' view on how to combat some of the rising crime, some of the rising violent crime and property crime. So why don't you detail that a little bit about what the Democratic plan is for that versus the Republicans' viewpoint?
I think that often my colleagues on the side of the aisle view fixing public safety as let's crack down and get tougher on crime. And although that is an option that we have as legislators, we can make new laws and make that creates harsher penalties or restricts certain activities and things like that, we have to look at a holistic approach. What are some of the external factors that play into public safety issues? Talking about gun safety and make sure folks aren't easily accessing guns. By making sure we have universal background checks. But also really talking about how do we crack down on illegal gun sales. Also looking at how does housing and jobs play a factor in public safety? Are we able to get folks in more safe, quality, affordable housing? I always talk about, when you walk outside in the morning, in my district is a prime example. I have downtown Milwaukee across the north side. In neighborhoods close to downtown, you're seeing quality homes, you are seeing clean streets, you are seeing efficient city services. But there's some zip codes in my district who don't see that. We see vacant lots, vacant homes. The city services aren't as effective and as good. It unconsciously puts you in a different headspace, unknowingly. So how do we address the housing issues and gaps, make sure that folks have access to quality, safe environment, quality, safe housing, get folks in homes? Also, how do we keep folks in jobs? I think we have folks who are working and making a living and fairly similar wages. Folks are less likely to commit crimes. We talk about even going to, I do DOC visits, prior Department of Corrections visits to prisons prior to COVID-19. I would talk to folks who are on the late end of their time, and they're getting out in the reach of society, and they get out with this positive mindset. They really want to get back out in society and be productive, be a part of the workforce, add to the tax base, raise a family, support a family. And they get out, and then they're hit with so many challenges and obstacles because of their criminal background. How are we helping support those folks as well? So then when we talk about public safety, it's not just about cracking down on crime directly. It's about addressing some of the external factors that play into reducing crime, reducing that activity, reducing recidivism. So looking at housing, looking at jobs, looking at healthcare, access to healthcare. So addressing those issues as well play into addressing public safety.
Okay, I just want to have a follow-up question to that. So there's a mayor's race in Milwaukee now. Mayor Barrett became the ambassador to Luxembourg. The acting mayor is now the city council president, Cavalier Johnson. There's a primary a week from today. Have you signed on for one of the candidates, Representative Haywood?
So I have turned in my absentee ballot. However, I am not officially endorsing the race. Although I will say I'm excited that the city is going to be getting new leadership. I think we're ready just to move forward and to have the direction and leadership. I think there's some great quality candidates in the race, and I think that post this day next week, we'll definitely have some more clarity on who the top two contenders are and who the presidents have picked, and then we'll go from there and figure out where we end up in April. But I have not endorsed officially.
Okay, there's a forum tomorrow night that WisPolitics.com is part of, and we'll be live streaming it, and you can see more on the candidates on a special Milwaukee mayoral page at WisPolitics.com. So viewers, check that out. Okay, so now I want to ask, I'm going to turn to some audience questions, and I think this one's for you, Representative Neubauer. So what is your plan to increase the number of Democrats in the assembly? That's the question.
It's a great question. Thank you so much to the person who submitted it. So our plan is to do everything we can to reach people in every part of Wisconsin to share what we're fighting for. We have an incredible group of legislators in the Capitol who have worked really hard to put forward policy that would make people's lives better every day, policy that would really impact the challenges that people express to us. And we've talked a little about those, but I'll reiterate: access to quality and affordable care. We're talking about childcare. We're talking about public education, all the way up to higher education and apprenticeships and training. What we believe is that people in Wisconsin should feel safe in their communities. Their families should be healthy and whole. They should have the opportunity to have a good job, save for retirement. We want a state that is more equitable, where everyone has those opportunities. And we know that if the policies that our members have proposed were put in place, we would move towards that reality. We would move towards that Wisconsin. And so over the next several months, we will keep fighting inside and outside of the Capitol to reach every person with that vision and to talk about how their lives would be better if we had different leadership in the legislature. I think it's a compelling message. I know that that the issues that we're fighting for resonate with the people of this state. I felt that very clearly when I traveled around with the Joint Finance Committee during the budget cycle. I feel that when I talk to folks in my district or visit other parts of the state, the people of Wisconsin are ready for some change. And I think we can deliver that.
Okay, so, but I'm going to add, I guess, a follow-up question, but operationalizing that in a midterm election when there's a Democratic president and a Democratic Congress, and districts that look like they're probably going to be not that much different because they're, before a conservative state Supreme Court. How do you operationalize that? It's not, it's more like a multi-cycle effort to regain the majority, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll do everything we can now. And what that looks like in this moment is recruiting great candidates. We have a lot of folks stepping forward in districts around the state who recognize the importance of this moment, who want to step up, and we're really excited about those folks. We are fundraising, we are doing everything we can to set ourselves up to be able to run really strong campaigns and reach those voters. So, Kalan and I and the rest of our team and our caucus, frankly, are really engaged right now because, again, we recognize the importance of this moment and the fact that there's a lot that we can do if we win more seats, and there's a lot that we would lose if we were to lose the ability to uphold the governor's veto, for example, in the assembly. There's a lot at stake right now. And we see that very clearly with the proposals that Rebecca Clayfish or other candidates for governor are putting forward. So we are just frankly going to work incredibly hard now through the election to support the governor, to be reelected, and to do everything that we can to pick up more seats around the state.
Representative Haywood, I'm going to turn to you, and you can answer that question, but also I want to get to, it seems like, from polling and from, conversations with other Democrats that, there's a certain lack of motivation. People aren't really excited. It's not a presidential election year. It's a different year, and there's been some disappointments. So what are you telling your constituents about, getting motivated, and how do you operationalize getting back into the majority?
So it definitely is a non-presidential year, it's a different year, which of course comes with its own challenges. But what we have to do is, one, for our members who are running for election, for the candidates that we're recruiting to run in these seats for the first time, also when we're engaging with voters, really expressing the importance of what's on the ballot. Often we talk about the names as the candidates, so you will see Kalan and Haywood on the ballot for my district. But also, what does that vote mean? What is that individual candidate going to support and work for or work against? So really expressing the vote, just what's really on the ballot, not by name, but by what may happen after that election. And really also, we talk about polling or looking at different districts and what the district breakdown may be politically. Really looking at what issues the people in that district care about, and how are our candidates, how are our members really speaking to those issues, and what's the plan? So I think as we go into the year, I think the momentum will pick up. I think folks will get engaged more. Folks' ears will perk up. I think one, raising awareness around what a midterm election means, both federally and here locally at the state. It really is looking folks, I think educating folks, making them aware, but just really working hard. One thing I've always said, Representative Neubauer, hit that and hit on. No matter what may happen this year, we will not be outworked, and then that's the important piece. We will work hard to make sure we do whatever we can do to build the bench, because it's not an overnight thing. The majority will not be an overnight, one-time thing. Building a bench, have that, I talked about earlier, that long-term sustainability. How are we building ourselves? Building the table in the way that we are building for success for not only this election, but years to come as well.
Okay, here's another question. This is, I'm quoting the questioner. Republicans will be stating what diseases medical marijuana treatments can be used for. This is not a wise course of action. It should be between doctors and patients. Why haven't Democrats been pushing harder for medical marijuana use when now Republicans will get the credit for it and gain votes by that legislation? Well, I don't think that medical marijuana is passing this session. It doesn't seem like it because it wouldn't get through the Senate. But I guess the questioner wants to know, why haven't Democrats been more aggressive on the medical marijuana issue?
So I think when it comes to medical marijuana or recreational marijuana and legalization, decriminalization, I think it's something we've all been having about in the Democratic side. I think it's something that we all want to see happen. For me, it's not even about who gets the credit for it. I can really care less. We talk about medical marijuana. I lost an uncle during COVID, not from COVID-19. He was battling cancer. And to watch him go through what he went through and think about how medical marijuana could have helped him and supported him and made it ease some of the pain he went through during that time. The thing about that, the thing that we could be doing it as a state for so many people, so many families around the state who are not doing it, mostly for political reasons, that's insane. So we talk about these issues that become so political, but most of the time, they're real world issues that really affect people on a day to day, and that's what we should be talking about. So as Democrats pushing forward, we introduced legislation. College time, Senator Agard is one of our senators. She's definitely been leading on it. We've been pushing for it. We've been asking for it. And we need now, what we're demanding is our colleagues on the other side of the aisle put the politics aside and come to the table and find common ground, because we have to be there for people in Wisconsin. When it comes to medical, not to even expanding more to recreational, how do we work on not being on the island with other states around us, getting the economic impact from legalization, but also the decriminalization piece of it all as well. It has 12 months of communities and families. We have to work on changing that.
Yeah, one of our audience members reminds me, and I was going to point it out too, that there have been proposals, especially from Senator Agard regarding legalization. Not just on the medical marijuana side. The governor has introduced medical marijuana and recreational marijuana legalization in his budgets. So I guess Representative Neubauer, what would it take for these things to happen, do you think?
Yeah, I appreciate this question, and I think Kalan, covered a lot of it. Our job often in the minority party as people, as legislators who are not able, right, to get our bills scheduled for committee hearings or bring them to the floor directly, is to push the conversation. And our members, the governor, grassroots advocates have been doing that on marijuana for years. As you pointed out, Jeff, it was included in the governor's proposed budget, full legalization of marijuana. And what we're seeing now from the Republicans is that they feel the need to respond because people in Wisconsin want to see marijuana legalized. We're getting overwhelming support when referendums happen across the state, when people are polled on this issue. And so we will absolutely continue to work wherever we can to find common ground with Republicans. The bill that was put forward recently by the other side of the aisle, I think, has some significant issues in terms of exclusions for medical marijuana. But what we want to see is action on this issue. And I absolutely see how the work of our members and folks outside of the Capitol have pushed this conversation to the point where Republicans do not feel that they can ignore it anymore and do feel that they need to put forward policy. Hopefully that means we'll actually see some action on it in the next couple of years, but it's going to continue to take work and pressure for them to move on this issue.
Okay, let's stay with you, Representative Neubauer. This questioner says, what are the challenges that rural Wisconsinites are facing? And is there anything Democrats in the state should be doing about them?
Yeah, really appreciate that question. I mentioned that I went around the state on the budget listening tour with the Joint Finance Committee last year. And then I visited some additional communities just to make sure that we were getting all the perspectives that we needed to be able to engage in that budget writing process. And a couple of the issues that I heard about over and over were access to broadband. It is really a necessity for people in this state to be able to live in 2022, to have access to the internet. That's true for telehealth. That's true for kids being able to do their homework. That's true to be able to run a modern farm or small business. We need to see more action on that. We're very lucky that the infrastructure bill, moved forward thanks to President Biden and Democratic representatives at the federal level, because Wisconsin is getting much needed resources for broadband. The governor's also made significant investments in that. But there's more work to do. This is not something that's optional, it's necessary. And this is a really crucial role for government to play, to make sure that people who live in areas that have not been served get that access. I also have heard a lot about water quality. Frankly, it is really painful to hear from people who have been impacted by PFAS pollution, who have seen the rates of illness in their community, and then who come to the Capitol begging for us to do something, and to see that legislation stonewalled again and again. We also have heard from farmers and folks running small businesses in rural Wisconsin about challenges with the worker shortage. I think there's a lot that we can do to make Wisconsin a place, again, where people want to live and want to stay. And that's long-term work. We need to make those investments if we want rural communities to be viable, so that there are opportunities, for people to stay there and see a future for themselves and their kids. And the last thing I'll mention, I've worked a lot on the issue of climate change over the course of my life. And I have seen over the last couple of years how we're actually making policy in the Capitol to respond to the impacts of climate change, but we are not doing anything about the underlying issues. We're saying, okay, we see that growing seasons are changing in Wisconsin, or that our tourism industry is being impacted by erratic seasons. But we're not actually doing anything to mitigate, again, those underlying impacts, or making the investments we need in resilient infrastructure. When I was driving to a budget listening session last year, I had to take a different route because of a road that was flooded, right? That's happening more and more around the state. We need to be making those investments that are going to impact folks in rural communities, people of color, and low-income people increasingly as we go forward. Okay,
so now here's another question. The governor's State of the State is a week from today. It's going to be on the same day as the Milwaukee mayoral primary. What are the Assembly Democrats' thoughts on what the State of the State is? Yes, you generally support what the governor will say. We don't know what he exactly is going to say, but what's the Assembly Democratic view of the State of the State? Why don't you take that one, Representative Haywood?
So I think as a state, we're considering the last 2 years we've had, we're in a good spot, especially economically. The regular low unemployment before the pandemic, and also the pandemic in April of 2020, we are at 14.8% when it comes to unemployment. We are now at 2.8%, and now it makes Wisconsin one of 11 states that are actually under 3% right now. So we got that going on. We got business growing. We have 10,000 more businesses registered than we did at the end of 2019, now in 2022. So throughout the pandemic, even though we're faced with challenges, we've seen business grow. You see business grow, you see job opportunities grow as well. We've seen wages increase. There has been a $20.5 billion wage growth since the second quarter of 2020. So we're seeing economically, we're building back better. We're getting in a really great spot. I think as a state, a lot of folks are bouncing back and getting to a better place. I think what the pandemic did was it introduced some new issues, but also it really magnified what do I call it? Cracks in our armor, how we were as a state. So I think we're now addressing those cracks as well. And we're building a better state. We're building better internal systems. We're building better policy. We're building better programming. But also realizing that, although the state is doing good overall economically, for some Wisconsinites, both urban and rural, that's not the same reality. And be honest about that with ourselves. Figure out how do we address that. Making sure we're working to get folks to better jobs. Making sure we're working to make sure that the economies of an individual household reflect the same growth and prosperity of the economy of the state. So how do we use that prosperity, that growth, to make sure we're filling in those gaps, to make sure that no one is left behind when it comes to the regrowth and the rebuilding of Wisconsin and bouncing back better, making sure that we take every spot. We're doing better than some other states, but also we still have work to do as well. I think that's what us as a caucus, as the Democrats, as well as the governor, we're looking to do. Make sure that we really make sure everyone's included as well.
Okay, what about you, Representative Neubauer? What, I guess, can Assembly Democrats add in terms of, the state of the state and, things that maybe might be overlooked by the governor or others?
Yeah, Kalan covered a lot of it, but I'll just highlight, a couple of things that I've heard recently from folks in my district. There's a local restaurant where my partner and I often go to get lunch or takeout. And, what I hear from them and other small business owners and workers in that industry, in the service industry or others adjacent industries, is just this sense of uncertainty about what comes next. The last couple of years have been incredibly challenging for all of us in different ways. But one of the things that I think they've left all of us with is uncertainty and some fear about the future. We don't know what comes next. We don't know if there'll be another wave. We, of course, all hope that there will not. And we will be able to, go back to gathering in the same way and traveling and not sort of having these impacts of the pandemic on our kids and our families. But I do think that there is a feeling amongst many people in Wisconsin, and I'm sure this is true globally, of just really of being tired of having to make a lot of sacrifices over the last several years to keep themselves and their families safe. And what I want us to do, and what I know the governor works to do every day, is to demonstrate the ways in which we can continue to show up for each other. The ways that government can be a force for good, can help people weather this storm and start thinking about the future and actually planning for a post-pandemic reality. I think we need to, as elected officials, recognize how hard it's been for folks over the last 2 years. And every policy that we put forward, every bill, every discussion with a Wisconsinite, right? What's at the center of that for us is recognizing that things can be better, that Wisconsinites deserve more than the leadership that they've been getting from Republicans in the legislature, and that we have a real and concrete plan to get there.
So I think part of this angst that you talked about, it comes from people who have kids in school. I mean, I think that it is, and teachers, not to mention healthcare workers, but just talk about education right now, primary education, K through 12 education, and you talk about uncertainty. It's like, well, will my child be going to school today, or will I be managing it at home? And it's affecting workforce and everything. So beyond the number of election-related bills, I think education-related bills have been coming hard and fast from the Republican side. So what is the Assembly Democratic vision on primary education or getting that back to normalcy?
Yeah, I can go ahead and jump in. When, again, I know I've referenced it quite a bit, but when I traveled around and did those budget listening sessions, we had about 50% of people who participated in those listening sessions talk about public education. And it became clear to me than ever before that this is top of mind for people in our state. And we have pushed for more investment in our schools, more support for our kids for many years, and that is going to continue. And what we see in the governor's budget surplus proposal is a really significant additional investment in our schools. We see increasing the special education reimbursement rate, which advocates and parents and kids have been calling for years, an increase in per pupil aid, for mental health initiatives. These are just frankly some of the most important investments and some of the most important policies that we can be passing in the next several months, because our kids just cannot wait any longer. I mentioned earlier, if you know a young person, you have seen the struggle, and I'll highlight in particular teenagers. Every parent that I know of teenagers has seen their kid just struggle and really have significant mental health challenges over the past couple of years. So again, I really hope that we can find some common ground. I am glad to see that Republicans feel the need to discuss education, and that they want to, let's say, get in the conversation. I don't think the proposals they put forward are really getting to the root of the issues that we have in our state. What Wisconsinites want is more investment and more support for their kids, and to see us have public schools that we can all be incredibly proud of. What they don't want is partisan efforts to break apart school districts or restrict funding for kids as part of a political game.
Okay, so we're running out of time, and I'm going to ask you, Representative Haywood, ending on this question because it concerns the city of Milwaukee. So the city of Milwaukee and has been making a proposal to get the Republican National Convention to Milwaukee in 2024. The Democratic National Convention was kind of sort of in Milwaukee in 2020. It didn't quite happen because of COVID. And then Joe Biden accepted the nomination in Delaware. So, I'm wondering, given what the RNC has recently done in terms of censoring its two of its congressional members, and talking about, although I guess it's kind of disputed whether the January 6th uprising was political discourse in some of the statements coming out of the RNC. Do you support having a Republican National Convention in Milwaukee in 2024?
When it comes to any national convention or national event or national ceremony, any city wants that to happen to their city. Whether it's Super Bowl, it's the All-Star game, the Olympics is an international thing. Cities want that. Cities want to attract that business. So when I think about a national convention, I think about the economic impact the DNC had on Milwaukee, but also the economic impact we have with this convention or any national convention. When it comes to creating jobs and dollars that get put in the city, infrastructure in the city. So I think that's where we're focused at. I know for the folks I've talked to who are pitching for this to happen, I think that we have a great team of folks in Milwaukee who are just really concerned about how do we generate more revenue in the city of Milwaukee, which helps out the state of Wisconsin as a whole. How do we create those jobs and bring them there? I know the folks even that visit Milwaukee, they do a great job of trying to share the message and vision of Milwaukee, what Milwaukee brings to the table. So I think it comes from a perspective of wanting to bring more national conventions to Milwaukee. Definitely full support that team. I will just say that I think for this convention, the DNC or RNC, it gets political. I'll also remind any party that comes to the city of Milwaukee to be very aware of the messaging of the party, what you're standing for, what you're supporting. If you're going to come to a city like the city of Milwaukee, ensuring that you really truly have what the residents care about most in mind, and figure out how do you support those goals and those ideas in that policy. Although it may not be the policy of your party, how do you support those ideas that would be in that city with those residents?
So the burden would be on the Republicans to message it right when they got to Milwaukee.
I would hope they would, but also at the same time as well, I think it's for us to hold them accountable and make sure that we're expressing the interests of the folks from Milwaukee and the Democrats of Milwaukee, what we stand for. And also, I think for us as Democrats, making sure that we're still engaging with voters and letting them know that we are here for you. We understand what you're going through. We understand what you're asking us to do, and we're here to support you. I think that's the goal.
All right, well, we're running out of time here now, so I want to thank the two new Assembly Democratic leaders, Representative Neubauer, who represents Racine and is the Assembly Minority Leader, and Representative Haywood of Milwaukee, who is the Assistant Minority Leader. So thanks very much to both of you for being part of this program today. And you can go to wispolitics.com for upcoming programs. Go to the right-hand column and scroll down. And if you want to get a printed copy of our new directory, you can message us at info@wispolitics.com. So I want to thank our sponsors for the Madison Club event series. We have AARP Wisconsin, Xcel Energy, Walmart, American Family Insurance, and Hush Blackwell Strategies. And thanks to all of you for tuning in today. And thank you again, Representative Haywood and Representative Neubauer. We'll see you next time.